Hey guys, it's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a video all about the different panels that I saw while I was at BookNet Fest in Orlando. While I was working on my BookNet Fest vlog, I realized I had like a crap ton of footage. A good portion of that was of the panels that I saw. I was thinking, what's a way I could still share the panels with you guys, but like in a fun way. So I came up with this idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of do like a BookNet Fest recommends video. So based on the different panels and the topics that were covered in each panel, I'm going to recommend some of my favorite books that fit that theme of the panel. The first panel that I saw while I was at BookNet Fest was Writer and Fan.
One of the things I think is really interesting is that your fandoms change over time, and some of your fandoms are like your ride or die, it'll always be in your heart, but some of them you kind of break up with. How has your experience with fandoms changed over time? Are there any that like you feel like you've broken up with?
I definitely broke up with Buffy fandom in the sense that when I went to college, the show changed and I changed. Mostly I didn't have time for fandom. I broke up in the sense that I had to go cold turkey or I would not have gotten into college, let alone survived college. And I didn't get into Harry Potter fandom until I was like a junior in college, so I knew what I was doing because it was safe. But my relationship with it has really changed, especially as the show has aged in a certain way, and what we know about its creator has changed and aged in a certain way. So it's always like kind of like that first love, and I'm almost sad about it sometimes, like I don't love Buffy the way I used to.
Some of my favorite fandoms and things that first introduced me to the fandom space were Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically Dead Man's Chest. That's when I really went balls to the wall, knees deep in that particular fandom. The Vampire Diaries, which is something I was way too obsessed with. A couple original TV fandoms were Gilmore Girls and One Tree Hill. Both of these were things that I had been watching since I was in middle school and were really kind of like my first big experience with fandom. Like, it was the first time I ever had feelings of obsession towards fictional things. The OG, like the one that really put you over the edge and the one that everybody, particularly in my age group, really felt a kinship and passion for, and that is Twilight. Special moment in history. Nothing like that has quite happened since. So the second panel that I went to at BookNet Fest was alternative storytelling. On this panel, we had different panelists who really focused on different types of storytelling. So not just the novel. Being that I had never heard of storytelling podcasts before, I don't have anything to recommend you for that. I can give you some audiobook recommendations. I've really gotten into audiobooks this year. Some of my favorites that I have listened to have been The Lunar Chronicles, which are narrated by Rebecca Soler. She does all of Marissa Meyer's books, so pretty much anything Marissa Meyer has written makes a great audiobook because Rebecca Soler is just so incredibly talented, and I have absolutely loved everything I've listened to, which has been the entirety of the Lunar Chronicles, and I intend to do my reread of Renegades via audiobook. Also, really love and enjoyed the Illuminae files on audio. This is a full cast. This has sound effects. This is the best production standpoint audiobook I've ever listened to. For the third book, I listened to the audio as I read along in the actual physical book, and that was my favorite way to experience this. Another favorite audiobook of mine, and the last one I'm going to mention for this particular video, was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I loved this as an audiobook. I had a really hard time reading this in the physical print form, and I actually didn't much care for it when I read it as a physical print. So I listened to it via audiobook, and each of the characters had a different narrator. They were all very distinct sounding, and it really helped to get me in the lives of the characters and make me feel for them a little bit more and made me connect with them a little bit more. I just really preferred this on audio. I don't have a whole lot of graphic novel recommendations because I haven't read a whole lot, meaning I've read like 3, but I did really enjoy Wires and Nerves. So after that panel, the next one that I went to was Mental Health in Fiction panel.
Mockingjay, the third book in the Hunger Games series. It was really the first time that I saw a protagonist in YA go through something traumatic and have to face the repercussions of going through trauma, and it's so often the ending part after the big like climax of a story is glossed over, and I felt like in Mockingjay was the first time that I really saw that explored, the character's mental health after such a traumatic event occurred.
So being that I read a whole lot of fantasy, I was not expecting that clock to start chirping. Anyway, being that I read mostly sci-fi, fantasy, unfortunately, those characters don't often have mental illness addressed. I don't read a whole lot of contemporary, and the contemporary that I do read doesn't really focus a whole lot on like mental health fiction type of thing, so I don't have a whole lot of recommendations, but I do have two, and one of them actually happens to be a dystopian. Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. I just felt like this was such a great portrayal of PTSD. It's one of the very few times that we actually see a main character who's gone through war, gone through traumatic events, actually like suffered consequences as a result. Other recommendation is a contemporary one, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I feel like it's never actually said in the book that Kath has anxiety. I feel like it's just like an understood thing that she has anxiety. I can't remember. I read this book several years ago, and I know there's quite some conflicting opinions about the anxiety representation in this. However, I do feel like her experience with college was incredibly relatable. Like, I just felt so seen, so understood, so represented by my first couple of weeks at college, because I was doing a lot of the same things that Kath was doing. So after that, the next panel that I saw was the Outside of Romance panel.
Non-romantic relationships that meant a lot to me was Anne Shirley and Matthew Cuthbert, her like adopted father figure. You don't see a lot of relationships between fathers and daughters. You see a lot, if there is a relationship with a parent, it's usually mothers and daughters, which of course is really important. I love Gilmore Girls, but that's something that you so rarely see. You so rarely see like a strong father figure who's also very empathetic to what like a woman is going through, and that is something I'm really close with my dad.
Now, if you've been here for a while, you might know that romance is one of my favorite parts of a novel, so I don't have a whole lot of books that are solely focused on friendship. There is romance in every one of these books I'm about to show you. I feel like the focus isn't necessarily the romance. The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This is my favorite book about friendships because it is about 4 friends who are super, super close in high school. It was just the most accurate representation of a friend group that I've ever read. I remember reading it and sending snippets of the dialogue and stuff to my friends and being like, look at this, this is us. Do you feel seen right now? Because I sure do. Another one that has a great friendship group is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I haven't talked about this book in a hot minute. There are 5 kids that get recruited by the FBI to work on cold cases, and they live in this house together, and they have a really interesting dynamic, and I love their friend group and how it transforms and evolves from book 1 to book 4 and the different conflicts that they go through, and there is a relationship between a couple of the characters, but I don't think the relationship is ever the focus of this book. And this one's more like a crime YA. It's really good. Then I'm gonna mention the same book that they mentioned on the panel 100 billion times, and that is To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which has a huge scratch across the cover. How did that just happen? I feel like I just might have done that when I pulled it out of the box. This book was mentioned at length on the panel for the sister relationship. And I too love the relationship between Margot, Laura Jean, and Kitty. This is like something that I have wanted my entire life. I've always wanted to have sisters. I've always wanted to have relationships like this. And I'm always eternally jealous of people who have this kind of bond in their family. And the last one that I have to recommend is The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashares. These 4 girls mean so much to me because this is something that I was obsessed with. This is a lot like The Unexpected Everything, just like 20 years earlier. 15 years earlier, 10 years earlier, an older version of The Unexpected Everything. And ironically, the next panel that I went to was Sex and Fiction, which is the complete opposite.
It can be something interesting to juggle of being a reviewer of books and feeling like I have to be a crusader of like, no problematic relationships ever, but also like really enjoying the dynamic that these 2 characters have and knowing this is not good in the real world, or this would be a problem, like a situation I would be uncomfortable with if I encountered it in the real world. But in fiction, with like the unspoken contract that this is fiction, this is not an endorsement of this behavior necessarily, or something along those lines, there's kind of like a bubble there, I think.
The Wild Season series by Christina Lauren. This is the first book, Sweet Filthy Boy. I've loved every single book in this series. I've read all 4 of them, and they are all wonderful and amazing and perfect, and I love these characters and I love these relationships. Also read Roomies by them, and that was equally as perfectly wonderful. So basically now I need to read everything that they've ever written. Another favorite romance book that I've read is Amor Amor by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Again, it's just another fantastic romance novel. I freaking love the 2 main characters, Nick and Thora, and their relationship, and just the way that Nick is so respectful to Thora. Like, this is one of the best examples of a healthy relationship I've ever read. And then the final panel that I went to at BookNet Fest was the good versus evil panel, which really turned into an anti-hero, anti-villain panel.
The anti-heroes are the ones that are elevated the most, and being men, and anti-heroes being likable, and the anti-heroines are the ones that are definitely kind of squashed on and being like, oh, she's just unlikable, oh, she's a bitch, oh, you know, whatever. And I feel like we are seeing a lot more, I feel like in the book world, of like anti-heroines, but still not, and even like really good female villains. I feel like even that is tough because, like we were saying before, a lot of the origin stories of these female villains traditionally has been she got her heart broken, she can't have babies, and now she's gonna be like you know, the evil witch.
Sarah Jane from the Book Life and Sam from Thoughts on Films were on this panel, so there was a lot of the Darkling conversation happening. I would agree that the Darkling is one of my favorite anti-villains that I've ever read. He's very complex. He is one of those villains who has an agenda, has an idea, and is fighting for a particular idea that they feel is right. And I feel like those are the most terrifying characters because they have so much power and they just so wholeheartedly believe in what they are doing. Leigh Bardugo writes great anti-heroes and anti-villains in general. I would argue that every character in Six of Crows is an anti-hero. They're not well upstanding citizens of society. Another favorite that I don't feel like it's talked about very much is Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. This is a book entirely filled with anti-heroes, anti-villains as well. In this world, people have started to develop superpowers, but they're not using them for good like Superman would be. They're using them for evil and for selfish means. So they're becoming dictators and tyrants and criminals and thieves, and they're basically ruining this world society. So nobody wants them around. So all these people are banding together in rebel groups to fight these superhuman characters, but they're not doing it in like a super good way or like a morally right way. So like, that is it. Those are all of my recommendations for the different panels that I saw at BookNet Fest 2018. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a little bit different. Tell me in the comments down below, and until next time, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!